Get the real news at 5. The Channel 5 News 5 o'clock report. You're watching Channel 5.
President Bush delivers his State of the Union address.
And I call upon Congress.
And from across the Union, live reaction. Viewers interact with President Bush's Chief of Staff, Samuel Skinner.
This is ABC News Nightline, a special State of the Union edition. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
We're going to operate on the assumption this evening that you have already heard all or most of what President Bush had to say in his State of the Union address, and that you have also heard Speaker Foley's Democratic response. If you were expecting to hear large chunks of either on this broadcast, you won't. Instead, we have invited one of the most interested parties in the country, the President's Chief of Staff, Samuel Skinner, to listen with us to the questions and comments of two small groups of voters who are gathered, respectively, with ABC's Jim Wooten in Manchester, New Hampshire, and with Nightline correspondent Jeff Greenfield in Phoenix, Arizona. We will also be trying to coordinate with Tom Snyder's national radio program to hear from him how callers have been reacting, principally to the President's speech, but also to Mr. Foley's. We will, of course, be looking for Mr. Skinner's response to all of this. Just to give us a sense of how the speech is played, let's go first to Jim Wooten in New Hampshire. Jim, I know you told Peter Jennings after the speech that you thought it had fallen a little flat on that audience, but maybe you'd elaborate a little bit.
Well, the audience itself here in this room was gathered for a Chamber of Commerce Citizen of the Year awards banquet. And many of them were Republicans, I expect, and many of them expressed some, they had affirmative responses, but it wasn't enthusiastic, not as enthusiastic as I might have anticipated. And I think the problem for the President is that perhaps Mr. Skinner and others of his lieutenants raised the expectations too high. You know, the President came here about 2 weeks ago and to a state that is absolutely devastated economically, and said almost nothing about what he planned to do, and said, just stay tuned for the State of the Union address. I think, given the expectations for what was going to happen tonight, a great many New Hampshireites were disappointed. It is for that reason that I thought perhaps politically it's probably a negative for him.
All right, Jim, we're going to be coming back to you and to some of the folks who are there with you. What we're going to try and do now is coordinate with another broadcast that is ongoing and live, and I hope this is not going to be inconvenient, but we are joining in Los Angeles Tom Snyder, who is the host of the radio show, which is heard by 4 million people every night on 220 stations of the ABC radio network. Tom, you're rarely dressed this elegantly. Can you hear me all right?
You noticed. I can hear you fine, Ted.
All right, very good. I would assume that you've gotten a lot of calls throughout the evening since the President and Speaker Foley went off the air. Give us sort of a pulse of the nation update, would you, Tom?
Well, I mean, 20 phone calls isn't a pulse of the nation, Ted, but I think what people are saying here tonight is that while they appreciate the President's efforts tonight, there are some disappointments. I hear people saying the President really didn't speak to the American foreign aid program. People are concerned about money going to Moscow, to Tel Aviv, to other cities around the world, at possibly the expense of Cleveland or Sacramento. So there is that concern. There are people who feel that the President really didn't come forward tonight and put together some directions in which he'd like to lead this country. They talked to me about JFK in 1960, saying, we will put a man on the moon by the end of this decade. They seem to want that kind of vision from the President, and they weren't hearing it, although people do give the President credit for at least giving the appearance of trying to work with the Congress to solve the economic problems.
Tom, if convenient with you, we will be coming back to you a little bit later in our broadcast and yours.
Come on back, Ted. And by the way, how do you keep these things in your ear?
You've got to have bigger ears, Tom. That's what it needs. All right, Nightline correspondent Jeff Greenfield is in Phoenix, Arizona, where he watched the State of the Union address with 5 people from that community. Jeff, give us a quick taste of what the reaction there has been, and then we'll give Mr. Skinner a chance to respond to everything he's heard so far.
Well, I think it's fair to say that the folks here were skeptical coming in and they were skeptical going out. My own reaction as a increasingly old and long since retired speechwriter was how much this speech could have entitled Remembrance of Things Past, how the rhetoric had Mr. Bush trying to go back to scenes of former triumphs. His line, I'm going to talk about big things, is a direct lift from his '88 acceptance speech. When he said, "This will not stand," that's the words he used to describe our response to Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. When he said, "You know what's in my heart," that was the 1988 invocation of the more caring, concerned president. He even paraphrased Barry Goldwater's famous 1964 acceptance speech when he said, "Strength in the pursuit of peace is no vice." And I believe I've discovered an incredibly important fact that the president actually paraphrased or actually lifted a line from Paul Simon's song, "Boy in the Bubble," when he said this is an age of miracle and wonders. So I'm not sure rhetorically what the goal was. I can say the difference between 1988 and this is it's one thing to rally partisans in a convention hall. It's another thing trying to do it in a hall with divided political loyalties, and I'm not sure that it worked. I have a feeling that, that if this was the defining moment, frankly, in rhetorical terms, it fell a bit short.
All right, joining me here in our Washington studio is the President's Chief of Staff, Samuel Skinner. What do you expect? A couple of reporters and a talk show host, right? What do they know?
Well, Ted, I think they were a little tough. I happened to have been in the Congress tonight when President gave that speech, and the expectations were high, and they were probably too high, because this really isn't the defining moment. This is the beginning of the 1992 domestic agenda for President George Bush. This is the unveiling of his 1992 agenda. This is not going to be the defining moment. What's going to be the defining moment is what happens the rest of this year. Having said that, and recognizing the expectations were high, some of those expectations were raised by Republicans, I thought the reception by those Republicans that had expected a lot was very, very strong, and they thought it was a very good delivery. But more importantly, I've been meeting with groups all over the country, from all over the country the last few hours, talking about our programs, and we've gotten a lot of support for what the President has in his short and long-range program, and that's really going to be the measurement of the program and the 1992 agenda, not how a speech is read by various people.
Now, Tom Snyder was raising an interesting point that apparently was raised by some of his callers on his radio show, and that is the kind of focused goal that President Kennedy raised with voters in the early 60s when he said, "We are going to put a man on the moon." I realize you can't keep coming up with goals like that, but I rather suspect that what his callers may have been talking about is something that you can point to and say, we've either made it or we haven't. Were there any of those kinds of goals that were intended in tonight's speech that those listeners just didn't catch?
Well, actually, those goals, you know, are few and far between. The President had one a year ago when he said we're going to make sure that Kuwait is liberated and that the Saudi Arabia is protected. He had a goal. He met that goal, one of the most significant military victories in history. So that was a moment that he had the opportunity to do that, and he did. But those are very few and far between. What you really want to do, Ted, is put a program out that's really going to generate economic activity and generate jobs, take care of some of the family interests, and move this country forward in education and health.
You make the point. For example, right now you've got, what, 7%, a little over 7% unemployed? The President could have made that as a goal that by the end of this year, or by State of the Union next year, that 7% will be down to 5%, or down to less than 5%. That would have been perhaps not an achievable goal, but it's something that can be measured. Why wasn't he more precise on what clearly is bothering an awful lot of people in this country, unemployment?
I think, Ted, what he did tonight was lay out a program that, if it's enacted by the Congress, will put 500,000 people back to work this year. That is what the economic advisors tell me the impact of this program will be. Over 5 years, it'll generate hundreds of billions of dollars of gross national product, or its equivalent. So this short-range program is a very, very effective way to get jobs back into the economy and get people working.
Aren't you also going to lose a lot of jobs from the cutbacks in the defense industry that the President talked about tonight?
Well, there are some loss. You know, that's the ironic thing. We've spent trillions of dollars to win the Cold War, and now we have one final price. It's a price that we're all willing to pay. It's the downsizing of the military and moving that technology and those people into the domestic side of the business so we can compete in the global economy. And it's ironic that you got to pay that final price having won the Cold War under the leadership of 9 presidents, including George Bush. But we're going through that transition, Ted, and what the President was saying today, during this difficult time, Let's do some things that'll, in the short range, generate half a million jobs. Let's take an investment tax allowance and generate some activity in equipment that means so much to jobs.
Let me interrupt you, Mr. Skinner, because what we advertised at the beginning of this show, we still want to bring across, and that is the opportunity for people to talk directly to you. When we come back, we'll also hear what some presidential candidates had to say about President Bush's speech, and our audience in Manchester and the one in Phoenix will talk with the White House Chief of Staff, Samuel Skinner.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by Charles Schwab.
Everyone has a dream, a vision deep inside.
When I decide to follow up on an investing idea, I need a broker who's ready when I am.
We make it easier to follow your own lead.
I can call Schwab at any hour, nights or weekends, get the information I need, even place an order to trade.
Always there to give you just the help you need.
Help yourself at Schwab today.
They won't work in this heat.
They say no AC, no show.
Say you need something sent overnight.
Those prima donnas.
There are a few companies you can call. The part's on its way. But say you need it by 10:30 a.m. Guaranteed, there are two. But only one is so efficient and reliable. They get it there on time for far less.
It's showtime.
Which is why to some people, there is only one, UPS.
News, weather, sports, all in the first 10 minutes. Channel 5's 10 at 10. News, weather, and sports in the first 10 minutes. Are we keeping you up yet?
The House of Lords will never be the same.
Can I have a word with you?
Next time on Family Ties.
Wednesday at 6 on Channel 5.
Some say she should be the candidate. In the center of the Clinton controversy stands the other woman, his wife, Hillary Clinton, with Sam Donaldson. Prime time, Thursday.
It does not take long in a political year. No sooner had the president made his speech this evening than the Democratic presidential candidates began to react. Let's hear the first reaction now from Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton.
I thought that he basically refused to assume any responsibility for the present problems of the country, or to offer any coherent vision of the future, or to tell us the truth, which is that we're going in the wrong direction economically. We're losing ground. The middle class is losing income. And we need a total different strategy to be a high-wage, high-growth country. And I don't think he did that.
All right, and now let us go immediately to New Hampshire for the first question for Sam Skinner. Would you be good enough to identify yourself, first of all, and then give us your question, please, or your comment, if you want to make a comment.
My name is Hal Eckman. I'm co-owner of Eckman Construction Company here in Bedford, New Hampshire. And Mr. Skinner, I was favorably impressed with the President's speech and about some of the tax programs that he has proposed. However, I am concerned about how the President, and I'd like you to answer this question, how the President intends to actively go after Congress to come up with an approval of this legislation, considering that some people are going to think that this is just pandering to the wealthy. I don't feel that way, but I'd like to know how you think that the President's going to do it.
Well, first of all, we're going to go up to the Hill tomorrow and meet with the leadership, both the Republican and the Democratic leadership, and the President will be there, and the legislation will be delivered to the Hill tomorrow, and we'll begin to discuss with the Congress how we can act his short-term growth agenda, which will, of course, include a number of those things that will help in the construction industry, the first-time home buyers, and some of those initiatives, and some of those things that will really help in home construction, which we think needs some real help. We'll also ask for some of those legislative changes that will allow us to work in the passive loss area and get some more investment into real estate. So you've got to convince Congress that it is in this nation's best interest to act now. And of course, we all know Congress is a very deliberative body and very slow. And we've got to create a sense of urgency. We're going to start tomorrow in the Congress with the leadership.
There was a certain echo in the gentleman's question of what Governor Clinton said in that brief soundbite that we heard. the Democrats clearly are going after you and your program, making it sound once again as though the tax cuts are going to be for the rich and the middle class is going to take it in the chops again.
Well, as you know, one of the tax cuts that was proposed today is the capital gains cut. And over 60% of the people that would benefit from the capital gains tax cut would be incomes of $50,000 or less. I was with someone the other day who was a senior citizen. She just turned 65. She wanted to sell her home and give the money to her children, and she had to pay a huge capital gains on her home because she didn't have any more exemption left. That's the kind of person that's going to benefit from this tax cut. So I don't think this capital gains is just a tax cut for the rich. Most of the people that benefit from it will be, in fact, people that have incomes of less than $50,000.
We're going to move around as much as we can, so we're going to switch out west now to Phoenix, and one of Jeff Greenfield's guests. Would you please be good enough to identify yourself and come in with your question or comment?
Hi, my name is Sharon Willis, and I have no employment right now, so you might as well say I'm unemployed. And that is basically my main question. I am at the over 50 group, and there are a lot of us homemakers out there that had to go back into the job market after many years of raising children. There are not enough jobs out there for the older people. And then when there are, we are not sufficiently trained. I think we need some more training for the people that to go back into the workforce.
Well, you're absolutely right. We were in Atlanta last week where we announced the President's Jobs 2000 program, which is a consolidation of the training programs within the federal government so that someone like you can come to that organization or to an agency in your area and get the kind of training that's necessary to get back on the job. Obviously, the most important thing we need to do is generate new jobs so that you can compete for those jobs. And the investment tax allowance will go a long way to do that. Obviously, the acceleration of spending will go a long way. As I've said, over 500,000 jobs can be created this year alone if the Congress will act by the 20th of March. And I would hope with the job trainings program that we have and the consolidation, as well as a lot of economic activity that we now don't have, there'd be a lot of jobs that you could compete for very effectively and hopefully get back to work.
All right, we're going to see
a combination of training as well as getting some incentives back into an investment back into the economy to create jobs.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Skinner,
problem,
but we're going to see if we can get a few more questions in. Next time around, we're going to take another quick break, and we'll continue our discussion in a moment.
It's not Waterford Crystal or a Hasselblad lens. It's a headlamp. And if you think that's impressive, wait till you see what's attached. Introducing the new Lexus ES 300 Sports Sedan.
Do you really think naphtha can be replaced with a non-flammable solvent?
In 1929, she was the only woman and the only PhD chemist in the physics lab. But over the years, she was responsible for 29 different patents.
Hello, I'm Sylvia Stacer.
Dr. Stacer created a new career path for women and for her company. The same company that leads the nation in patents granted to women over the last decade. We think Dr. Stacer would be pleased.
Thou lets you do great things.
The morning the crime happened, he said he was there. But a different man was arrested and convicted and stands to spend the rest of his days in jail. Now, following a year-long Channel 5 News investigation, you'll finally hear his side of the story.
Why are people attracted to each other if they're not compatible?
Is your mate a good match? How to know if you're right for each other on the next Jenny Jones.
Boris Yeltsin, a hard man to find, harder to know.
Barbara Walters tracked down the Russian leader in Moscow for an exclusive interview. 2020, Friday.
Tomorrow, just what is the national debt costing you? Also, reaction to the President's State of the Union address and Barbara Walters here on Good Morning America tomorrow.
He said taxes are too high, spending is too high, regulations are too heavy. It sort of makes you wonder who's been in charge the last 3 years. And so I think if Mr. Bush wants to join us in running against that record, he is welcome to do so. But what the people of New Hampshire have to decide is who is the more credible conservative, given the record of the last 3 years, and they have to match Mr. Bush's rhetoric tonight against that rhetoric.
Well, there's that old cherubic thorn in your side. You summed it up pretty well. I mean, was the president criticizing his own record there over the past 3 years?
Well, I think the president was saying there's more to be done. The president has a good record in a number of areas, but obviously more can be done, and we've got to really tighten our belt during this economic downturn. And if we can freeze employment and hold government spending down, which the president has been able to do on the discretionary side as a result of the budget agreement, we will make some significant progress towards generating those new jobs. So Pat Buchanan has the wonderful ability to talk about it, and he really doesn't have a record in government in being elected and taking that responsibility on. And I think we really have to look at the overall record, look at the achievements of this administration, and we'll do fine in New Hampshire as well.
Before we go out to Phoenix, which we're going to do right now, give me your best guesstimate at the moment. How well is Pat Buchanan going to do?
Well, I think Pat Buchanan is probably going to garner a significant number of votes. Richard Nixon got 65% of the vote up there when he was running for re-election. New Hampshire is a very unusual state, but we'll be up there twice. I was up there with the people in New Hampshire, with the president a couple of weeks ago, and we got a warm reception. I think the president will do fine. I'm not going to guess what that percentage will be, but the president will have a nice win there.
You expect to beat him?
Oh, yes, we'll beat him.
All right, back out to Phoenix again. Would you be kind enough to identify yourself, who you are, what you do, and what you'd like to say to Mr. Skinner?
I am Rabbi Albert Plotkin, Senior Rabbi of Temple Beth Israel. I'm deeply concerned about the welfare and education of our children. And I realize that during Desert Storm, we spent $1 billion a day on ammunition, and I'm concerned that so little of that is now being spent on education and health for our children. Also, we are spending 3 times that much to bail out the S&L failures. Don't you think that we deserve to give our children a little bit more than we are giving them at the present time?
Rabbi, I certainly do agree with you. I would remind everybody that, of course, our allies all over the world helped pay for that battle in the desert, and in fact, we really paid a relatively small amount of that total bill. I would also remind the viewers, especially Rabbi, that there's an awful lot of good news for those of us like you and I that share the concern for the family and education of children. The president announced, among other things, of course, the ability to deduct interest for loans for education. That's a real plus, and a lot of people in education are very excited about that. There's also an increase in the exemption for children, and that will go a long way. A family of 4 will have another $2,000 in exemption. We're talking about a program managed by the private sector that'll cover most Americans. It'll make health care available to almost 30 million Americans that don't have health care today. Those are all things that are very important. And then finally, the president talked about Head Start, education of the 4-year-olds. The president has put, since he became president, has doubled the amount of money that goes into Head Start, and we have almost all of the 4-year-olds now are fully funded for Head Start. So he shares your concerns, and that's why the program was geared that way tonight.
I realize it would be satisfying to go back and forth a couple of times. Rabbi, forgive me, but we're going to switch over now to New Hampshire so that we give a few more people a chance to pose questions or make comments to Mr. Skinner. Go ahead, sir. Would you identify yourself, please?
I'm Pat McGee. I'm senior counsel with Porter McGee Public Relations in Manchester. And Mr. Skinner, what we heard tonight was not something that the president could not have put forth 2 years ago. And it seems that recently, as 6 months ago, the president was claiming that there wasn't a problem, there wasn't a recession. So my question is, why has it taken the president and the administration, this long to figure out that there has a problem, and why haven't we seen a a proposal put forth before this?
Well, Mr. McGee, if you had asked 50 of the leading economists in this country 6 months ago whether or not we should have the type of accelerated program that the president announced tonight, 49 out of 50 would have said, no, it's not necessary. The economy is coming along nicely. The president listened to those economists, as did most of the major businesses in this country, and made a decision that the economy was coming out of the recession well. And in fact, everyone, those 49 economists, I visited the big three economists up in Detroit with the big three automobile manufacturers. They were all very shocked. We met this wall of resistance in November. The program the president has put together here is a reaction to that unexpected wall of resistance that no one in this country anticipated 6 months ago, including the very best in the economic world.
Let me just jump in with a very quick question, if you would, a fairly brief answer, too. It sounds to me as though what you're saying is then that the president's speech tonight acknowledges that he has been wrong, that the recession is not going to go away without there being some particular measures taken.
That's right, Ted. Most of the economists and the business leaders all said 6 months ago, we're moving along nicely, we're coming along nicely. It so happened in about November, something happened that really stopped that growth. And it was then that the president began these efforts that were announced today.
So it's not going to happen automatically?
It's not going to happen automatically. It's pretty clear to us that we've met some resistance that was unexpected, and now this program deals with that resistance that was unexpected, that showed really on the radar screen, so to speak, in November. And he's taken some very dramatic action because of that. But he did. He was in New Hampshire. He said, I was wrong. He says, if misery loves company, I had 49 out of the 50 best economists in America who were also wrong with me. But now let's forget that. We know we were wrong. We're not sure why, but let's put a program in place to deal with it.
All right. We're going to take another break, and we'll have more reaction from the Democratic presidential candidates and continue our discussion in a moment.
Volkswagen announces relief from the recession. Payment Protection Plus is here. Buy or lease a new Volkswagen now, and if you incur a layoff during the first 3 years of your finance contract, we'll cover your car payments. Plus, we'll cover your car insurance payments. And the best part, you never have to pay us back. Up to $500 a month for up to a full year. Payment Protection Plus. Call now. It's revolutionary, and it's only from Volkswagen.
Recently, DuPont announced that its energy unit Conoco would pioneer the use of new double-hold oil tankers in order to safeguard the environment. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. DuPont, better things for better living.
I don't care what they call this new strain of flu. I still feel awful. But I don't take aspirin or Tylenol anymore. Today my choice is Advil. Advil reduces my fever and relieves my body aches. Advil, tablets and caplets, advanced medicine for pain.
I can't remember. It was something new.
Nicoderm, nicotine transdermal system.
Yeah, it's called Nicoderm. Oh, yeah, the patch.
Nicoderm, huh?
Yeah, it's a patch.
Nicoderm, nicotine transdermal system.
If you're using a credit card to get a cash advance, you're probably getting soaked. Because ordinary cards charge you interest. Right from day one, which is why you should use the Discover card. Just pay your full monthly balance and a small transaction fee, and we'll give you cash, interest-free. So you can avoid taking a bath. It pays to Discover.
They commit terrible crimes. When caught, they go to prison, where they spend their time writing about those crimes and selling their stories for big bucks. Yet their victims never stop paying. Next Donahue, convicted criminals defend their rights to profit from book or movie deals. Victims and their families are outraged. Inmate authors, are they paying the price for breaking the law or making crime pay? Next Donahue.
Wednesday at 9 on Channel 5.
There is some responsibility when you go through the list of goodies to say what it costs. And there was no attempt on his part to say, If we do all these things and appeal to you with all these measures, this is the drain on the Treasury. It's like you go into a grocery store. You pick up all the goodies and nobody tabulates how much these goods cost. That is a clear political act.
Mr. Tsongas, now let's go right out to New Hampshire with another reaction or question for Sam Skinner here.
My name is Dr. Sylvio duPuis, and I'm President and Chief Executive Officer of Catholic Medical Center here in Manchester. The President spoke in terms of health this evening and discussed the issues of access, of quality, of choice, and of cost. As he begins to unfurl his program, will he tell us who will be covered, what will be covered, who will decide, and finally, how are we going to pay for that package of health care services, Mr. Skinner?
You should be able to do that in about 15, 20 seconds.
Well, as the doctor knows, this health care is probably one of the most complex challenges that we face in this country. The President will unveil his plan on February 6th. It's a very complex plan. It allows and uses the private sector, hospitals like yours, to deliver that kind of care. It provides for choice. It covers millions of Americans who aren't covered now. It allows those Americans to transfer their insurance. If they become unemployed, they still remain insured. It allows people who can't now qualify for insurance to be qualified. And yes, it will be explained how it's going to be paid for. But it is not it is not one of the pay-or-play programs. It is not a nationalized system. Both those systems are either too expensive or we know they don't work. It's a system that relies on the private sector and great hospitals like yours to deliver that care on a choice basis.
Where, Mr. Skinner, is the money going to come from, which was the last part of the question?
Well, we'll go into a detailed discussion of that on the 6th, but there's a number of areas that it'll come from. And I think we'll just have to wait till the 6th till we unveil the plan. It's pretty clear to us, however, and to the American people, that without deteriorating care in any of those hospitals or providers, there's a lot of things that can be done to make the system more efficient and more effective, and we're looking for ways to kind of pay for part of this system, this new system, on getting rid of some of the administrative problems that exist, and making sure that we get some of the tort reforms and malpractice reforms that are so necessary and are causing so much cost in the system today.
We're going to go back and join my old friend Tom Snyder again on his radio program. Tom, if you would care somehow to synthesize some of the comments and questions you've been hearing tonight and pose one or two of them yourself to Mr. Skinner now.
Okay, thank you, Ted. And Mr. Skinner, good evening from all of us here in Los Angeles, sir. If I could just distill what people are calling about, there is support for the President at this switchboard tonight. There are people who are encouraged by what he said about health care. There are people who are encouraged about his commitment or his seeming commitment to helping first-time home buyers. There is some confusion about capital gains. Ted and Mr. Skinner, there is still a perception in the country amongst most people that capital gains is something that benefits only the rich. So they suggest that the President or his people do some explaining and try and get the message that that is not the case.
Actually, Mr. Skinner addressed that, I think, while you were doing your broadcast. So if you can give us another one.
There is a little confusion here about things that people read in the paper this morning. There were stories in the paper here yesterday and today that tonight the President would say something about repealing these luxury taxes on cars, on boats, on jewelry, on furs of certain price value, etc., etc. And there is some wondering as to whether or not that was in and taken out of the speech or it's going to come later. I don't know if Mr. Skinner has any information on that.
Yeah, Tom, let me see if I can address that. 2 years ago, they passed a number of luxury taxes, as you know.
Yes,
One of those taxes they passed was, of course, the boat tax. And what happened is that we lost a boat construction industry. We don't raise any revenue of any significance from that tax. And all the jobs, the thousands of jobs that were involved in the construction of boats went offshore. The President called for the repeal of that tax because it really isn't raising any revenue and it's destroying an industry. He also called for the repeal of that tax on airplanes because that tax also is causing a major job loss. He did not call for the repeal of the luxury tax on automobiles. because, of course, the luxury automobile market isn't nearly as impacted in this country as some of those others. But it will be in the budget that's announced tomorrow, and I don't think he did mention it in the speech, but it's certainly part of his program.
And the other thing people are wondering about, because part of the story this morning, and Ted, if I'm intervening on your time, please let me know.
No, go ahead. One more question, Tom, if you will.
Was the tax packages of 1986 that, in the view of many people, have been disastrous to investors, investment money, etc., that much of that was going to be undone because it was experimental at the time. Maybe I missed it in the president's speech because I didn't hear the whole thing, but was that part and parcel, or will it be part and parcel of what the president sends up?
Well, as you know, the real estate industry in your state has really been impacted dramatically. The president has called for the Congress to act immediately on changing the rule on passive loss transactions for active real estate investors. That will be good news for those people in the real estate business, and it will, in our opinion, along with the first-time home buyers credit, generate an awful lot of activity both in the retail as well as the business construction industry. So I think there's some good news for real estate in this budget package that will be announced tomorrow.
All right, Mr. Skinner, Tom, let me take this opportunity to thank you. We'll leave you on your own now and let you finish the broadcast. I'll try and be in my car to hear the end of it.
Thank you, Mr. Koppel, Mr.
Thank
Skinner.
you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Good of you to join us. We'll continue our discussion with Mr. Skinner and our guests in both Phoenix and in New Hampshire in a moment.
I still get butterflies.
Funny, she doesn't look married. I bet she cries or bites her lip.
Hello, stranger.
I'm hardly a stranger.
Well, you are late.
I know. You shouldn't have waited 10 years for this. Happy anniversary.
The Diamond Anniversary Band. Tell her you'd marry her all over again.
You sure can pick an appetizer.
These slip down one more time. I'm fed up with glasses that don't fit.
You don't have to put up with glasses that don't fit anymore. Because at LensCrafters, we have so many new ways to make glasses more comfortable.
LensCrafters glasses fit your snug points with features like new snug fit hinges that hug your head and won't lose their gentle hold. LensCrafters, for that cushion of comfort you've always wanted.
I never knew glasses could be this comfortable.
LensCrafters, better fit for greater comfort in about an hour.
Did you know the cost of 2 9-page fax transmissions from these Philadelphia newspapers to Chicago may surprise you?
I got an exclusive interview.
With AT&T Pro Watts, your business can't get a more accurate way to send a fax.
She talks a lot.
And our prices are extremely competitive. Even though the other company would like you to believe, they always save you lots of money.
Wait a minute. That's news to me. Can I quote you on that?
AT&T Pro Watts, another AT&T advantage.
It's party time on Cheers.
I'm going to need the best of everything. The best food, the best liquor.
The best bartender.
You?
Rebecca throws a VIP bash for her big wig boss.
Lovely party, Rebecca.
Why, thank you, Mr. Collier.
Ah, but look who's the surprise guest of honor.
Miss Al, I have gin and tonic.
Oh, come on. She'll bring him in.
Someone's going to pay for this.
I see our serving wenches here.
Next time on Cheers.
Wednesday, following the Channel 5 News 10 o'clock report.
For health reasons, Americans are eating more and more fish these days. But a 6-month investigation by Consumer Reports has found that a lot of the fish sold today is barely fit to eat. This week, we'll tell you about some of the problems Consumer Reports uncovered, including false freshness claims, misleading package labels, and fish contaminated by toxic chemicals. If this high-protein, low-fat food is a part of your diet, you won't want to miss this special investigation. This week at 5, only on Channel 5 News.
And we're back once again. Mr. Skinner, your ordeal is almost over. We're going to go back out to New Hampshire again. Go ahead. Would you identify yourself, please, and give us your question or comment?
Yes, my name is Franne Ciriello. I'm the owner of Eastlantic Advertising. And Mr. Skinner, on the onset of President Bush's talk, he addressed defense cuts, which, while I was glad to hear that he was only going that far and no further, that puts a tremendous amount of people out of work and on the streets. But there doesn't seem to be anything in place to encourage their employment. And maybe you can address that in just a few words.
Yes, Francine, I'll try to. As you, number one, there are some cuts that the president's going to make. There's a lot of pressure in Congress to make even more cuts than that, and deeper cuts, and we don't think that's appropriate. And number two, some of the things the President talked about in his short and long-term package, investment back into the economy will generate new jobs of a different type so that we can accommodate these people that are coming off and out of the defense industry and put them back to work on domestic employment. The investment tax allowance is one such example. The housing allowance is another example. So those are things that will generate jobs, as I said, 500,000 jobs this year alone, which will help the ease of that burden.
When you talk about, and we're going to go right out to Phoenix, but when you talk about saving 500,000 jobs or creating 500,000 new jobs, are you balancing off against that the jobs you're going to lose in the defense industry?
Well, we're talking about 500,000 new jobs as a result of the program. We haven't factored into that some of the losses in the defense industry.
All right, let's go out to Phoenix now. Would you identify yourself, please, sir?
Yes, my name is Tom Baker, and I'm a newspaper pressman for the Arizona Republic. And I listened to President Bush's speech, and my question is that he did not touch on some of the foreign trade things that have been happening over the last few months, and that the Japanese automobile industry has been increasingly growing in this country. Where are the tax cuts for the American manufacturers that the Japanese are receiving, as I read in the papers, and if so, when are these coming?
Well, as you know, the President made took a trade mission to Japan in an attempt to open those markets and to have the Japanese make a bigger investment in these markets in our country. And that we do believe that was a success. We just signed a computer agreement last week as a result of that trip. Opening markets is very important. As the President indicated, the North American Free Trade Agreement is very important. That'll generate jobs in this country. We've got to do what we can to get a good GATT negotiation, because if we do that, we'll open a lot of markets all over the world for our manufacturers. And if we make the kind of investment that's necessary in technology, and we allow companies to free themselves of these regulations and this government bureaucracy that's tying them down, we'll be much more competitive as we offer our products in the world market. Those are things the President talked about tonight that we're really going to begin to implement immediately.
Mr. Skinner, we're going to have to bring you back, because I know a lot of these folks would enjoy the chance to talk to you at somewhat greater length. I appreciate you having been with us, however. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll be back in a moment with a program note.
Polyshades by Minwax. It's a stroke of genius. Polyshades is rich stain and polyurethane protection in one. Polyshades gives wood a beautiful protective finish in half the time. Polyshades by Minwax.
Dean Witter believed in listening.
Listen, not only to what our clients say, but what they mean. Each client has a level of comfort. Endeavor to find it. We measure success one investor at a time.
Tomorrow on World News Tonight with Peter Jennings, the new battle against poverty, this one aimed at millions of American children. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been ABC News Nightline. If you wish a video cassette version of Nightline, the cost is $14.98, plus $3.95 shipping and handling. If you wish a printed transcript of this or any Nightline broadcast, please send $4 to Journal Graphics, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 303-831-9000.
Nightline is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Wednesday.
Your mother and I have decided to get a divorce.
And we want you to be our lawyer.
Do you know how long it's been since your mother and I have had sex?
He spits.
Watch your ash.
I'm aware of my ash. Your father hasn't touched me since he had his operation 3 years ago.
Civil Wars, Wednesday at 10, 9 Central.
Patchy fog is possible overnight with a low in the 20s.